Welcome back to Catholic Lunch Break on AM 1430. This is the weekly program where we catch up with all things Catholic in the greater Houston area. My name is Wyatt Goolsby. I'm the executive director of this radio station, KSHJ. Young adults here in the greater Houston area will gather this week to learn more about how they can grow in their relationship with God and to turn anxiety into excitement. Joining us here on the program is Dr. Johann D'Souza. He is a licensed clinical psychologist, and he works to integrate his Catholic faith into his practice. Johann, thanks so much for coming on the program. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt. I'm really excited to be here.
So, raised Catholic, you're raised in Spring, Texas in particular, and we were talking earlier just before we came on about you did undergraduate work at the University of Dallas, a Catholic school, and I think you had studied theology. Nowadays, you're a licensed clinical psychologist. Did you ever think to yourself, boy, I want to be a Catholic theologian?
Well, I didn't think too much to myself when I was growing up, which is part of the problem.
Right.
So I got into UD, and actually I started with math and physics, which I loved.
Okay.
But I had a massive conversion, actually, about halfway through, and I switched to theology.
Okay.
Which people in my life were right. It wasn't the most practical thing, even though I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I switched into psychology after graduation. But I do love studying Aquinas and Aristotle and the spiritual masters. So part of me still wants to kind of be a philosopher theologian.
Yeah, you got to love all the saints and the richness of our church. Tell me the name of your practice.
The practice is Values First Therapy.
And it's a little bit different because you integrate kind of Catholic faith and values, values that are pro-life in particular, into your work. And you state that readily on the website, for example. This is what you try to integrate. Tell me a little bit about your thought process in creating your own practice and wanting to be, open with all of your values and make sure everybody knows exactly what you stand for.
Well, I thought a lot about it because I knew it would be a risk to witness to traditional family values. And my thought process was, we have certain rights in this country, like the right to free speech, but we only have those rights if we exercise them. If we're too afraid to use those rights, then we don't have them. And in fact, we're going to lose those rights even in law if we don't exercise them.
Right.
I think Plato is the one who said culture has the force of law. So I thought, you know what? We only have one life. What is God calling me to do? He's not calling me to hide in a corner somewhere with my own personal values. I want to witness to these values as a service to others, to society. So I just decided my practice is going to be Values First Therapy. I combine modern science, scientifically supported therapy, with traditional family values of the dignity of human life, created male and female, and the beauty of chaste love.
Yeah, amen. Such powerful values, and certainly something that's needed in this day and age. There's so many challenges in our secular society as well. Tell me in particular, so therefore you work with a lot of young people in particular. You help to address OCD, anxiety, in some cases depression as well. So I imagine, even though you're primarily focused on young people, you see people of different ages and backgrounds.
That's right. Yeah, I've had a lot of experience mentoring teenagers for 13, 14 years. So I love working with that group. But in general, high-achieving young people, whether they're teens or young adults or older adults who are suffering from anxiety or a specific type of anxiety called obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay. And so is that, again, how do you begin to integrate the spiritual element of that? Do you do that openly? Do you tell them at all about sort of that element, which is sort of the God part about what they're doing, as opposed to just making it purely a scientific assessment?
Well, there's a couple ways. So one way is just by respecting those values from the outset and throughout the course of treatment.
Okay.
So, and it may be kind of a question like, well, what do those values have anything to do with the treatment that I'm doing?
Right.
Well, within obsessive compulsive disorder, there are certain symptom domains such as scrupulosity and fears of a sexual nature. So scrupulosity is the fear that God is mad at me or I'm doing something immoral. It's like having a very excessively sensitive conscience. The fears of a sexual nature, most people don't know about this. It's a common symptom within OCD. For example, fear of being a pedophile or of doing something very inappropriate. And that can be very disturbing for people, understandably, even though it's not who they are. Doesn't define their values or what they do. It's just an irrational fear that this disorder brings to them.
Right.
So the overlap with the values here is when I'm helping people overcome this disorder, the gold standard treatment for OCD is exposure therapy, facing your fears.
Okay.
So I need to be able to construct an effective exposure, an effective way for that person to face his fears without compromising his values, without asking him to do something that's going to be unethical or morally unacceptable.
Right. So it's so important to be able to listen to them, to know their background, and to make sure it's consistent with what they truly want in terms of those values. That's really great. I want to follow up, Johann, by just asking you a little bit about your own personal faith. You're Catholic, you practice your faith. Any favorite saints in particular, favorite devotionals?
Well, there's so many. Just saw the Cabrini movie. I'm about to finish her biography. It's amazing. But it's kind of picking my favorite saint is like picking my favorite book, right? But one saint that really influences my professional life is Saint Jose Maria, who is the founder of Opus Dei.
Okay.
So his mission is holiness in ordinary life, being united with Christ through your ordinary work and your ordinary life.
Okay.
So one way that it influences me is trying to do the best I can, not only in working with each client, but then also as a young entrepreneur to have the widest impact that I can, but striving to try to maintain that purity of intention throughout it, to do it for the highest motive, which is love of God. And of course, that's it's a constant practice, work in progress, but knowing that there have been many great lay people in the world who have done this, like Blessed Guadalupe, it's an inspiration to me to try to sanctify my own work.
Yeah, and I'm glad you'd mentioned he had founded Opus Dei in particular, and I'm glad that here on the program we can mention that because I think there's a lot of false assumptions about an organization like Opus Dei that really, like you said, it's much more integrated in terms of just being able to focus on prayer and doing and working your faith in everything that you do in life, as opposed to what you might see in something like the Da Vinci Code or reading a book or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because my first exposure to Opus Dei was through reading the Da Vinci Code in high school, which was really
It's more conspiracy theory kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the fiction section of the bookstore. It's an entertaining story. I wouldn't go back and read it now because it's morally inappropriate. I didn't know better. Well, I did know better at the time, but I wasn't, unfortunately, in line with my values at that time, or the values I should have had. But yeah, it's a very simple message: how to sanctify your work, have a life of prayer throughout your day, have a life of personal sacrifice, uniting yourself to our Lord, and then doing a natural apostolate of Christian friendship with your colleagues, with your neighbors, your family.
Yeah.
So it's a simple message, but it takes a lifetime to put into practice.
Sure, it's something we all strive for, to be able to come closer to Christ and to have a community like that. Again, you're going to be speaking this upcoming Thursday, which is August 29th. You're going to be at the Young Catholic Professionals event. They have a speaker event that's going to be held again Thursday evening, and it's going to be at the Holy Name Passionist Retreat Center. You'll start speaking at 7 o'clock, but the doors open at 6 o'clock. You're going to be talking about turning anxiety into excitement. I don't want to give away too much, but tell me why this is an appropriate topic for young people in their 20s and 30s.
Well, we know now that there is an enormous increase in anxiety among young people. This has been reported most recently and popularly with Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. Now, what most people don't know is anxiety, properly understood, is a latent superpower.
Okay.
If we're able to harness the adrenaline that can be experienced as anxiety, we can actually increase our performance, turning it into excitement.
Very good. So I'm looking forward to being able to hear more about that. Before we go, though, any tips that you want to be able to give to young people who are listening right now in terms of being able to grow closer to Christ when they might feel that they're at a distance right now?
turning to Our Lady, our Blessed Mother. She'll never leave us behind, and we can tell her anything and ask her anything, and she'll always listen.
Very good. Again, want to reiterate, Dr. Johann D'Souza, you have Values First Therapy. If people want to learn more about your practice and the work that they do, give me the website. How can they contact you?
ValuesFirstTherapy.com. You can also follow my Virtuous Leaders podcast.
Okay, very good. So you managed to get that website, Values First Therapy.
Yeah. For some reason it wasn't very popular.
Yeah. Well, you're going to make it popular by promoting these important values that are consistent with the teachings of the Catholic Church. So again, YCP event this upcoming Thursday evening. Dr. Johann D'Souza, turning anxiety into excitement. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Wyatt.
And we thank you for listening to this program, Catholic Lunch Break. We thank you so much for your support of our media ministry. Until next time, stay Catholic, Houston.